This is taken from Luke chapter 15 through 11 and 24. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the wealth that will belong to me.' So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he divided, all he had, and traveled to a distant region. And there he squandered his wealth in desolate living. Then he had spent everything. A severe famine took place throughout the region. Who had sent him? And he began to be in need.
Sorry, you're doing great.
So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the region, who sent him to his fields and to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating. No one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? And here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But when he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to him, 'Slaves, quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf, and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive now. He was lost and found.' And they began to celebrate."
And all the people said, I was at a pastor's gathering recently, and we were talking a little bit about call stories. Everybody in our group was saying we have forgotten to kind of go back and listen again to our call stories, and we've kind of forgotten who we are. And so I got to thinking a little bit about my call story, so I want to share a little bit about that with you. I was living at the time in Dallas, Texas. Cindy and I had moved from the little towns in South Dakota. We wanted to get out of South Dakota and break free and be somewhere different. So we moved down to Dallas, Texas, partly because my older brother was living there, so we had somebody to kind of check in with. And so we both got jobs. Cindy was working as a typesetter. I have to just say this, in South Dakota, she got paid $4.16 an hour doing typesetting. We moved to Dallas, Texas, and she got $21 an hour. So thank God for that. That's why I don't have any seminary debt. And I thought I was going to get a job as a band director. I was a music teacher, and I thought I was pretty successful in South Dakota. And so I decided to try to find a job there as a band director, but I couldn't get one. I was a little late in the ball game. Also, I didn't realize there was a little politics involved with getting a teaching job sometimes. You got to know somebody, and I didn't know anybody, evidently. And the competition was tough. And so I was without a job, which was hard on me. And then I finally got a job at Farmers Insurance Group as an adjuster. I was a property adjuster, so I know everything about your roof. I judge everybody by their roofs. No. Anyway, so I did that, but wasn't very happy with it. It just wasn't me. It just wasn't a good fit. And it's not that I didn't like it. They gave me a new car I got to drive, and the money was good enough. Cindy and I had moved from our apartment into a house, and we were making our rent payments pretty well. We were thinking about buying a house. But I just couldn't sleep at night sometimes because I just wasn't fulfilled. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling where this just wasn't me. And so one night, about 2 in the morning, I was up thinking about this, pondering who I was and what I was supposed to be doing in the world. And there was a knock on my door. It was not God, but there was a knock on my door at 2 in the morning. And I opened the door, and it was my mom and dad. My mom and dad arrived at our house at 2 in the morning. Now, this wasn't a total surprise. They wrote us a letter and said, hey, sometime here this summer we might come and see you, but they didn't tell us when, and so here they were, 2 in the morning. Now, this was a stunner for me, first of all, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was July in Texas, and it's what in Texas in July? Hot. It was like 89 degrees at 2 in the morning, and it had been 103, and they were driving a 1964 Volkswagen Bug, no AC. And they were coming all the way from South Dakota, 19 hours in a VW Bug, through the heat of the day to get to our house. I mean, this was a commitment. Right? They must have thought I was in deep trouble to come rescue me, but they weren't rescuing me. But it was great to see them. And they stayed about 3 days, and then, believe it or not, they got in their Volkswagen Bug and headed to Maryland to see my other brother and drove there. Now, this 1964 Bug, one of the things I remember, a couple things when they left, was I went outside to check my dad's tires because he was notorious for having some rough-looking tires. And so I went out there, and they were bald. I mean, these tires were bald. And so I said, Dad, I mean, you really should put on some new tires here. I could even help you get them if you want to. And he said, oh, no, let me check them out. And he got on his knees, and he felt the tire, and he said, oh, treads aren't even showing yet. I mean the metal, you know, that's not even showing yet. They got a couple thousand miles. I can make the rest of this trip, no problem. So that was number one. And then number two was, and this was just a ritual with my dad, he reached into his pocket here, and he pulled out a folded check. He always had a folded check, and he gave it to me. It was a $50 check. Now, we McBrides knew better. We never cashed it because it never went through. I might add, he didn't have any money, but he always gave us this check. And sometimes, if it was a real emergency, we'd keep it, and then we'd have to call him, Dad, I kind of need the money. Do you have it in the bank? And he said, well, give me a couple days, I'll get it. So anyway, so there was that check. And then he went on his way, and Mom went on her way. But there was something about that visit that kind of triggered me. And the next Sunday, Cindy and I decided to go to church. Now, we'd been to church, but we weren't regular churchgoers. We're preacher kids. Come on, you got to take a break from Mom and Dad's church every once in a while. But we hadn't been for a while. And so we went back to Coppell United Methodist Church, and we enjoyed it. Cindy and I held hands. Our 2 kids at that point, Ben and Cassie, sat in our laps, and we just really enjoyed being in church. And so we went back the next week, and the next week. And by the 4th week, Beth Shebel, you'll enjoy this, we joined the choir. And then we enjoyed that greatly. Then, fast forward to spring. And it's springtime, and I'm on a roof that I have to deny. I know it's not going to be a good roof. By the way, just one thing you should know, that if you're ever an insurance adjuster, never deny a roof when you're on top of the roof, because that ladder might disappear. Just saying. But anyway, I climbed down the ladder, and but when I was up on the roof, I noticed that there was a white steeple not too far away. And there was something about that steeple that just seemed to be kind of calling my name. And so when I got done with the claim, and it was not a happy claim, I decided I would go and check out the steeple. And it happened to be on the SMU campus, where Perkins School of Theology is. Perkins School of Theology is a United Methodist seminary. And it was the chapel for Perkins School of Theology. Wow, this was all coming together. I went inside, and I just sat there in the back. And I remember just sitting there, pondering what all this meant. Maybe that there was something nudging me to do something. And sure enough, one of the professors, he was actually a retired bishop, John Wesley Hart was his name. Now there's a retired bishop's name for you. And he sat next to me, and he said, you want to talk a bit? And we started talking. And by the end of that talk, I had signed up to go to seminary, and I had decided to be, not quite yet to be a pastor. I was still trying to figure out what all that meant, but seminary helped me do that. Now, that's kind of my call story, but it's also a story about my dad and about his love for me. I just think that visit, of all the things, that visit by my mom and dad taught me so much about their love. We have kind of what I would say a love that stays put sometimes, but sometimes love calls us to run towards the people that need us, to run, to get in our Volkswagen Bug, even if they are like your tires aren't good, and just get there, to be there for your loved ones. And that taught me a little bit about the depth of my father's love. And for you fathers out there, I want you to think about that. Are you ready? Are you prepared to run when you need to? The story of the prodigal son is a beautiful story, but one of the greatest moments in that story is the father running, right? And he doesn't care how he gets there. I always see him losing his shoes, losing his robe. He doesn't care at all about all that stuff because he wants to get to his son. He wants to get to his loved ones. Are you prepared? And that's the first thing I want to say about fatherhood. If you're a good father, you're ready. You get ready for those moments. The second thing I want to say, and I think this was brought up by Andrew at our men's group. Sorry, Andrew, I'm going to pull you out here. But Andrew was saying, I struggle with patience as a father. Join the club, guy. And here's the thing I want to say about patience, because I think that if you have that picture of the father waiting, Cindy, if you could put that up. One of the things it doesn't really say in the story, but we know in the story, is that father is always out there looking for their son or their loved one to return. A lot of parenting, both fathers and mothers, is about waiting. And let me tell you, we're not good at it. And there's reasons right now we're not good at it. We've got technology. We've got all these gadgets and all types of things that you don't have to wait anymore for anything. My dad did not have patience, but he learned it. How? A really crappy car that wouldn't start, that ran out of gas when it wasn't supposed to. The gas gauge didn't work. All sorts of things happened with that car, and he learned patience by waiting there in that car for people to come help him. He learned patience because he had to. We don't have those things anymore. So what I want to tell you is, If you don't have patience, it's not a virtue. It's not a virtue. You just aren't born with patience. It's something you practice. It's something you learn. And so because we don't have cars that break down and we don't have gadgets that don't work, you've got to learn how to be patient in different ways. You have to intentionally practice it. Work on it. Wait 5 minutes. Count them out before you say something. Count it out. Breathe. Get some breathing techniques so you learn how to wait. And the other thing about waiting, I just want to say, and I really think it's prayer. It's not when you pray about someone. I'm not just like saying, oh, God, do this. That's not how I pray. It's, God, prepare me so that I'll be ready to meet whoever I'm going to meet with the proper attitude. That father, if the son would have come home, right away, he would have just been at him. But he had to wait. And in the waiting, he prayed and he prepared his heart so that when his son came home, he could give the son the hug first instead of the lecture. That's me. Instead of the lecture, right? He had enough on him, enough tread on his tires that he didn't, go after his son. It's important to be patient and to learn how to prepare our hearts for those meetings. One last thing about fatherhood that I'd like to share is that I told that story as if my dad was the only one there, but my mother was right by his side. And parenting today, it's teamwork. And there's not one role over here and one role over here and they're different. No. You just got to get together and you got to kind of figure out what roles you have and what gifts you have and what gifts your partner has, and you work that out. And I think it's just so important today because roles are always changing, right? The whole world is changing, and parenting changes. But the intent is always to love in whatever way it works for you guys, for you all. Make it work. Give and take. Don't get set in those roles. And so, I was called to ministry, and because of my dad, you can blame him. I am here before you, giving you this sermon. But in truth, it was a time when I found myself in what God was calling me to do. And that doesn't mean you couldn't be called to be an insurance adjuster, by the way. That's fine. It just wasn't mine. So, and all the people said, amen. By the way, this picture, you can't count them all there, but do you realize how big we are? By the way, Mom and Dad, look at them. Mom is like really lovey-dovey over there. But all of us, all 10 of us in that Volkswagen Bug, all the time. And there again, it takes patience, right? All right. Let us invite the band. Oh, is it choir? Yes, choir's coming on up. They've got a beautiful song they're going to share.
While the choir's coming up, I don't speak very often, but I just wanted to
Go, Jim.
let everyone know that
Coming up here.
this is our last choir performance for this current year. But on July 20th, we will have a Today's Choir. So if you have always wanted to try the choir, that will be your day to come join us and give it a shot and see what you think. It is a no-commitment day. And then I also wanted to thank the choir and also the band musicians for all their hard work this year. We've grown a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I just want to thank them for that.
Thank you. And I have one other thing. Another way you can join the choir is just be Paul. And Paul is joining us too. He's never been to a Today's Choir, but he is in our choir now.